When people think of Martin Milner, they often picture him driving that Corvette on Route 66 or patrolling LA in Adam-12. Yet in the early 1950s, long before stardom, he was just a friendly Army private, spotted at sunrise, leaning on a fence and sharing jokes with new recruits. That warm, disarming charm would remain his signature, whether on a military base or in America's living rooms. Born Martin Sam Milner on December 28, 1931, in Detroit, Michigan, Milner arrived at a time when the Great Depression still weighed heavily on the country. Even though the Roaring Twenties had ground to a halt, cities like Detroit were fighting to stay afloat through manufacturing and an unbroken sense of American optimism. Martin's father, Sam Gordon Milner, worked as a film distributor, a job that hinted at Hollywood's glitz even as most Americans struggled just to make rent. His mother, Mildred, was a talented dancer with a flair for stage performance. From these two, Martin inherited both a practical sense of hustle and a knack for showmanship. When Martin was a toddler, the Milner family relocated to Seattle, and then, as opportunities shifted, they made their way further down the West Coast. Eventually, they put down roots in Los Angeles. That city, forever tied to dreams of movie stardom, proved pivotal for young Martin. He spent many of his formative years in neighborhoods, buzzing with film crews, occasional sightings of movie stars, and a cultural environment that encouraged creative ambition. Unlike many kids chasing random daydreams, Martin's interest in acting was nurtured in a place where the entertainment industry wasn't just a fantasy. It was right next door. As a child, he was energetic and outgoing, although not the class clown. Teachers described him as eager to participate but also kind-hearted. If a smaller kid was being bullied, Martin stepped in calmly, not with bravado but with a quiet sense of right and wrong. He took to drama quite naturally, landing small roles in local theater productions by the time he was in his early teens. That mix of early stage experience and parental encouragement laid the groundwork for the career that followed. In 1947, Martin caught his first real Hollywood break with a small part in the film Life with Father, starring William Powell and Irene Dunne. He was only 15 at the time. While not a starring role, it was a foot in the door. The movie sets, the call sheets, the makeup trailers, it lit a fire inside Martin. He realized that acting wasn't just memorizing lines. It was about becoming part of a creative team, everyone working in tandem toward a story worth telling. Although the film business was notoriously tough, Martin's youthful optimism kept him believing that with grit and a bit of good fortune, he could make this his life's work. That same year, however, a fierce obstacle emerged. Martin contracted polio. In the mid to late 1940s, polio outbreaks haunted communities. For a young teen with acting ambitions, it was a crushing diagnosis. But with unwavering support from his parents, he underwent physical therapy, fought through pain, and gradually reclaimed his strength. He emerged from that battle changed, maybe not physically scarred, but with an inner resilience that would define him for the rest of his career. The experience taught him that setbacks could be overcome as long as one never lost sight of the end goal. By the time Martin graduated from high school, he had already worked on a few more films and commercials. He briefly attended the University of Southern California, but the pull of acting proved too strong to ignore. Hollywood was booming with post-war cinema, and studios were hungry for new faces. Martin landed supporting roles in movies, like Sands of Iwo Jima, 1949, where he brushed shoulders with John Wayne. Though his role was minor, it offered him a glimpse of how war stories could be captured on screen with cinematic flair. That film, about the iconic flag raising on Iwo Jima, also reminded Martin, on a deeper level, of the real-life sacrifices soldiers made. The war had ended just a few years before, and the portrayal of the Marines' battle left a profound impression. In the early 1950s, as the Korean War flared, Martin Milner's own sense of duty beckoned. He joined the U.S. Army in 1952. While many recall him only as a TV star, it's crucial to remember that, like countless young Americans, he wore a uniform and served his country. Stationed at Fort Ord in California, and later traveling to different bases, he spent much of his 2-year term working in entertainment units, appearing in training films or small stage plays that aimed to boost troop morale. While it might not have been frontline duty, his service wasn't without significance. On quiet nights in the barracks, he'd sometimes share behind-the-scenes Hollywood tidbits with fellow soldiers, bridging the gap between their worlds. That hospitality, whether offering tips for stage presence or just listening to someone's personal troubles, became a hallmark of Martin's approach to life. Post-discharge, Martin returned to Hollywood with a sense of urgency. He wasn't just a bright-eyed kid anymore. He had served in the Army, experienced a bit of real discipline, and overcame polio. He was ready to chase his acting dreams with renewed vigor. And indeed, the mid-1950s saw Martin snagging roles in films such as Mr. Roberts, 1955, starring Henry Fonda and James Cagney, and Gunfight at the OK Corral, 1957, alongside Burt Lancaster and Kirk Douglas. Though these appearances were often overshadowed by the bigger stars, Martin's sincerity on camera caught viewers' eyes. Directors noted how comfortable he seemed in ensemble settings, a trait that would be invaluable for television roles, where chemistry with co-stars is paramount. Back at home, Martin was juggling professional goals with personal growth. He met Judy Jones, a bright young singer and actress, in the mid-1950s at a mutual friend's party. Their connection was immediate. Judy found Martin's earnestness refreshing. Martin loved her spirited personality. They married in 1957, forging a partnership that would remain strong through career highs and lows. As children came along, Martin juggled fatherhood with audition calls, sometimes bringing the kids onto friendly sets, introducing them to co-stars, or letting them watch from a safe distance. His private letters to friends revealed a man deeply devoted to family. When the cameras turn off, he once wrote, "There's no applause in the living room, but that's where my heart feels most alive." In 1960, Martin's profile took a dramatic leap forward with the television series Route 66. Partnering with actor George Maharis, Martin portrayed Tod Stiles, a young man traveling America's highways in a Corvette convertible, stumbling across local conflicts and moral dilemmas. The show's premise was deceptively simple. Two friends, drifting across the country, encountering new people and problems each episode. But it tapped into the restless energy of a generation that was just beginning to question societal norms. Shot on location all over the United States, Route 66 gave viewers a window into different regional cultures, something quite novel for TV at that time. Martin's portrayal of Tod balanced wide-eyed wonder with earnest compassion. If someone was in trouble, Tod tried to help. If a community harbored secrets, Tod sought the truth, all while wrestling with his own identity. Audiences loved that sincerity. Filming wasn't all highway romance. The production schedule was fierce. The cast and crew moved from state to state, facing weather extremes and logistical challenges. At times, Martin fell exhausted into bed, only to wake before dawn to begin the next day's shoot. Yet he rarely complained. In interviews, he described it as an adventure that mirrored the characters' journeys. Long drives, new faces every week, a sense that life was bigger than one's hometown. There were stretches of homesickness, too. Martin missed Judy and their children dearly. Weekly letters, phone calls when possible, and occasional family visits to location shoots helped maintain that bond. Still, he He admitted in private that the separation weighed on him. Fame had its price, and the cost was often measured in lost daily moments with loved ones. As Route 66 soared in popularity, Martin's star rose correspondingly. He began receiving invites to Hollywood galas, talk shows, and media events. Fans recognized him on the street, greeting him with an almost familial warmth. Through it all, he kept an unassuming demeanor, never letting success go to his head. Coworkers admired how he treated set decorators and background actors with the same courtesy he offered big-name directors. That consistent graciousness was rooted in his upbringing, combined with the humility he'd honed through earlier hardships. The show ended in 1964 after 4 successful seasons. By then, Martin had become a familiar face for millions of viewers, yet he felt ready for fresh challenges. The transition wasn't easy. The mid-1960s TV landscape was shifting. Westerns were falling out of favor. Sitcoms were changing shape and more daring. Contemporary themes began emerging. Martin took guest spots on various shows and considered film offers. However, the next defining chapter of his career arrived in 1968 with Adam-12, an NBC police procedural from the creative minds behind Dragnet. Adam-12 followed officers Pete Malloy, Martin Milner, and Jim Reed, Kent McCord, 2 LAPD patrolmen navigating the daily rigors of law enforcement in Los Angeles. At first glance, the premise sounded simple: 2 uniformed cops responding to calls. But the series offered more. It captured the texture of real policing, from minor disputes to high-intensity chases, all framed by the everyday humanity of its 2 leads. As Pete Malloy, Martin balanced seriousness and approachability. He became a voice of experience, guiding Jim Reed through dilemmas that tested both courage and moral fiber. Viewers saw each episode as a day in the life of these officers, complete with comedic moments, sobering lessons, and unwavering partnerships. For older Americans who remembered Martin from Route 66, it was a joy to see him in uniform, though this time the uniform was a police one, not the army fatigues he'd once worn in real life. The show offered more than just entertainment. It shaped public perception of law enforcement at a time when America was grappling with social unrest and generational shifts. The late 1960s and early 70s were marked by protests over civil rights and the Vietnam War, leading many citizens to question authority. Adam-12, by emphasizing honesty, fairness, and compassion in policing, provided a more reassuring view. While some critics considered it too rosy, most fans embraced the show's sincerity, and Martin Milner's portrayal of Pete Malloy reinforced that notion. He radiated decency, reminding audiences that behind every badge, there was a person wrestling with the same moral complexities as the rest of us. Behind the scenes, this movie demanded less travel, but still carried an intense schedule. Co-star Kent McCord later reminisced, working with Martin was like having a steady compass. He never lost his cool. Martin's earlier Army service gave him a certain discipline in daily routines. He arrived prepared, lines memorized, always ready to adapt if the director changed a scene. He was also known to chat up the real LAPD officers who advised the production, asking about the stress of the job, the sense of duty, and the emotional toll. Those conversations informed his performance, helping him convey a subtle realism that resonated with actual police officers who watched the show. Over the course of 7 seasons, Adam-12 became iconic, shaping the buddy cop archetype that future shows and films would emulate. Martin's presence was so integral that it felt unimaginable for it to continue without him. The series ended in 1975, leaving Martin at another career crossroads. By then, he was in his early 40s, recognized widely for 2 major shows that bookended a significant chunk of his professional life. He had navigated the transition from a carefree young traveler on Route 66 to a seasoned authority figure on Adam-12, and fans who had grown up with him felt a special connection. It was as if he had guided them through different eras of American life. Though he never again found a role as prominent as Pete Malloy, Martin stayed active. He appeared in guest spots on series like Fantasy Island, MacGyver, and even radio talk shows. He also co-hosted a radio show about travel and fishing, two passions he'd harbored for years. In smaller or cameo roles, he always brought that same earnestness. He enjoyed the flexibility of picking projects that fit his lifestyle, wanting to be more present in family life. His kids were now teenagers, and Martin relished the chance to attend their school events, cheer them on at sports games, and simply be a father without the crushing demands of a 9-to-5 filming schedule. Throughout this period, he occasionally reconnected with his Army past, lending his name or presence to military charity events, especially those supporting veterans. Although he hadn't seen combat, he understood the emotional burdens that military service could impose. He admired those who endured active duty deployments and felt that any measure of goodwill he could offer was worthwhile. Fellow veterans he encountered would sometimes share stories, grateful that Milner, a Hollywood star, still remembered the brotherhood of uniformed service. In his personal life, Martin remained deeply devoted to Judy. They had 4 children, 2 daughters, Amy and Molly, and 2 sons, Stuart and Andrew. The couple formed a close-knit family, living in a comfortable but not ostentatious home. Friends recall relaxed backyard barbecues, with Martin flipping burgers, while old colleagues from the Adam-12 days swapped behind-the-scenes jokes. Yet not everything was picture perfect. In the early 1980s, one of his children grappled with substance abuse, a challenging time that tested the family's resilience. Martin approached it with quiet determination, seeking therapy for his loved one and attending support groups. He rarely spoke publicly about personal hardships, maintaining that dignity and privacy he'd always valued. But those close to him witnessed how compassion and unity helped the family weather that storm. In the latter half of the 1980s, Martin also confronted health scares. Nothing as dire as polio had been decades earlier, but enough to remind him that life was finite. He scaled back on public appearances, focusing on personal well-being. For Martin, encounters with old co-stars and greeting fans were affirmations that his work had mattered to people, not just as entertainment, but as something that struck deeper chords of community and trust. Controversies in Martin's career were relatively minimal. He wasn't known for headline-grabbing feuds or political statements. A few asked if Martin, as a lead actor, should have pushed for more nuanced storylines. Others felt Route 66 romanticized the open road, glossing over the poverty and social issues prevalent in the places the characters visited. But these debates seldom centered on Martin personally. Instead, they reflected broader societal shifts. Martin, for his part, typically deflected serious critiques with a measured humility, insisting he was just an actor, not a policymaker. He believed in telling stories that resonated with everyday people, trusting that deeper complexities might bubble up in the viewer's own reflections. In the 1990s and early 2000s, Martin largely stepped back from acting. The approach of 21st century technology also brought new fans, thanks to reruns on cable channels and DVD box sets. Younger audiences discovered his legacy, embracing them as vintage gems. Online forums sprung up discussing episodes in detail, praising Martin's dynamic with co-stars like George Maharis and Kent McCord. Some fans even sent letters or social media messages to his family, expressing gratitude for the life lessons gleaned from these old shows. Lessons about friendship, duty, fairness, and the quirky wonder of the open road. Martin's final years were a gentle winding down. He stayed in Southern California, enjoying occasional fishing trips, a pastime he adored since childhood. Family members recall quiet afternoons by a lake where Martin would share stories from set or from his Army service, how an unexpected thunderstorm halted a training film production, or how John Wayne once joked with him in between scenes. These anecdotes, brimming with personal warmth, never made it into official biographies. They were intimate glimpses of a man who'd been part of Hollywood's golden tapestry, yet always found contentment in life's simpler joys. When Martin Milner passed away on September 6, 2015, at age 83, the tributes flowed in. Former co-stars, real police officers, fans who'd grown up watching his works, and even veterans who'd served with him for a time in the Army posted heartfelt messages. They recalled how his performances had provided wholesome entertainment during challenging decades, and how his personal generosity lingered long after cameras stopped rolling. Kent McCord, deeply moved, noted that Martin had been both a mentor and a friend, a figure who embodied the best aspects of the business while sidestepping its more toxic traps. Social media buzzed with younger viewers discovering that one of their father's or grandfather's favorite TV actors had quietly moved on, leaving a legacy behind. Reflecting on Martin's journey reveals just how seamlessly he tied together separate worlds. He was a veteran who knew the discipline of military life, an actor who captured the American soul on highways and city streets, and a family man who cherished private bonds above all. He never achieved the blockbuster fame of a Hollywood superstar. Instead, he was woven into the living rooms of ordinary Americans week after week, guiding them through stories that balanced entertainment with gentle life lessons. Even those who only vaguely recall the guy from that cop show or the man who drove around in that convertible would recognize his face in a heartbeat. And that's all for today's video. Don't forget to leave a like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe so you'll always be in the loop. Thanks for watching.